friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I am so excited because just a couple days ago, I hit 6,000 subscribers. And just a couple days ago was my 5-year BookTube anniversary. What a fun thing for both of those to happen so close to each other. I'm so excited. I cannot believe that this is a hobby that I still enjoy, that I still enjoy investing time into, that so many of my close friends have come from this hobby, this passion that I have of reading. And I just want to say first, before I jump into the answers to some questions that you gave me, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this little corner of the internet. Some of you have been here for weeks. Some have been here for months. Many of you have been here for years. And I just want you to know that I appreciate all of you. And I wouldn't keep doing this if it weren't for you. So I just want to thank you. I thank you for sticking around through all the different iterations of my hair, through all the different iterations of different things that I have done with my channel. I just appreciate you all so, so much. So much. More than you know. And so I'm really excited today because I had posted a couple days ago in anticipation of hitting 6,000 subscribers. I posted in my community tab for some questions. I know I would have gotten a ton more questions if I had also posted on Instagram and also made a video about it, but I didn't. So today we're just going to answer the questions that I got through that community tab. In the lives that I do every other week here for Reading Sprints, I often answer some questions there as well. Please feel free always to ask me questions if you want to know anything about my life or about reading or anything along those lines. But today I have my laptop here because that is where I will be reading the questions from. These are again, from my community tab. So there weren't too many of them, but I think that I have definitely enough for a fun video. And I have not sorted them into life ones and bookish ones or booktube ones. I just kind of am going in order from the first ones that came in, and I'll go up until the most recent. We will see how long this takes, and I have not prepared answers. So I'm a little nervous about that. I don't always do so great on the spot, but I'm going to do my best today. So the first question comes from Melissa at Libraries and Labradors. She asks a couple questions. What couples in books are your favorite? Okay, Anne and Gilbert, 1000%. Anne and Gilbert are my favorite couple. I also love John Thornton and what's her name? Margaret Hale from North and South. I love them. And if I had to pick an Austen couple, I really like, Persuasion is my favorite Austen, so I'm going to say Captain Wentworth and Anne Elliot. Although Unrequited Love is never very fun, and they had to wait so long for their love to come to fruition, but I do love them. I love their story the best. So I'll say those couples. What audiobooks are better than the physical? Okay, what comes to mind right away, since we just are coming off of March and I touted the praises of Echo on audio by Pam Munoz Ryan, I would definitely say you need to listen to the audio of Echo instead of reading the physical. I read the physical first, and I still haven't listened to the whole audio, but I have listened to snippets of it, and it has music in the background, and it's just really well done. Any audiobook that has a full cast, I think, is a lot more fun to listen to than reading the print book. And I also really prefer books that have language other than English in them or take place in a different country, because often the narrator does a great job of accents and things like that. So I would recommend those. I love listening to classics as opposed to reading them in print, or doing a combo where I listen and read at the same time. Because for me, one of the bigger hangups in reading classics, I often enjoy them, but one of the hangups is the language and not really being able to fully understand what's going on sometimes, in particular with Shakespeare. I enjoy listening to Shakespeare's plays rather than reading them in print. So I think that's enough ideas there. And her third question, Melissa's third question is, where has been your favorite place to travel, and what was the best thing you ate there? Oh man, this is hard because I have done a lot of traveling. I've been very blessed, and I'm so thankful that I've been on quite a few missions trips and also have taken some fun trips. My most recent fun place was definitely our trip to Turkey. My mother and I 2 summers ago went to Turkey. My brother was living there at the time, and we were able to go and visit him, and we did a whirlwind tour of a bunch of different cities in Turkey. I got to meet Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures. I got to go on a sunrise hot air balloon flight, which was so cool. And what's the best thing I ate in Turkey, if I'm talking about Turkey? Oh, I was there over my birthday, and we had loaded waffles. There are all these waffle shops in the cities in Turkey, and so it was like a thick waffle, and it had all kinds of sauces and ice cream and candies and fruit on it, and it was amazing.
Get the birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Krista. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
And I've now made that a tradition. So this past year for my birthday, I had loaded waffles instead of cake. And this year coming up, that is the plan again. So it's not a super Turkish thing to eat, but I did love loaded waffles in Turkey on my birthday. That was pretty fun. Okay, Patricia O asks, if I could read a book again for the first time, which would it be? I'm not a big rereader. I think it would be fun to reread Anne of Green Gables and or The Chronicles of Narnia, which are two series that I do reread occasionally, but to read them again for the first time would be a lot of fun. But I also think that it's fun rereading them because I pick up on things that I might not have noticed before, and I get to appreciate all the little nuances that are in there. In particular with Anne, I love Marilla more and more and more every time I reread that book. So maybe I don't want to read that again for the first time because then I'd miss out on all of that. I don't know. That's a hard one. Patricia also asks, which country is top of your list to visit that I have not yet been to? I really want to travel everywhere. There are a lot of places I want to go. So I think of like Australia and New Zealand. I would love to go there so badly. I also would really love to go to Prague in the Czech Republic. I've also never been to anywhere on the African continent. And so I would love to go to like South Africa or Kenya would be really cool, or Egypt. Oh man. Yeah, I have a lot of places I want to travel to still. Someday. Marin Emily Johnson asks, she's just recently discovered my channel. Welcome, Marin. I'm glad you're here. Who is my favorite book character of all time and who is my least favorite book character of all time? Okay, obviously I would say Anne, but recently I really love the Count from A Gentleman in Moscow. He is a character that stood out to me last year for sure. I just loved his personality and loved his perspective on life. So he is definitely a newer favorite character. As far as a least favorite book character, Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter series. She's the worst and the reason why I hate book 5. There is so much other good that happens in book 5, but because Dolores Umbridge is there, I just don't like reading about her. She's the worst. Ugh. Maria T asks me, how do I balance reading with other hobbies? She says, I find reading sometimes takes over and I end up doing nothing else. Yeah, well, that's my life. I don't have a ton of other hobbies that I participate in all the time. I mean, I love to go for walks. I love to play board games. I love to crochet, but like crocheting I only do in the winter and I can listen to an audiobook or watch a show while I crochet. I enjoy puzzling and coloring occasionally. I can pop in a show or an audiobook while I do those things. I love to go for walks and hiking, and I can do those things while listening to an audiobook. And board games requires other people, so I don't get to play them nearly as often as I like to, but whenever I go to my cousin's, I always bring a bag of games. I have a bag of games out in my trunk at the moment, just in case, because you never know. But I don't have a lot of other like around the house hobbies. I have this year started to get into growing plants, like having more house plants and trying to take care of them. I don't know how well I'm doing, but I have a handful that are thriving right now, which is awesome. But that doesn't take a lot of time to do that. So I guess that's my answer for that one. Christine from Books by the Quote asks, with all the book content that you create and participate in, do you ever fear that you might burn out and lose your love of reading? That's a really good question. And I know that book slumps are a thing and burnout is a thing. And what I would say to that is I have this mentality that I've been very intentional about over the last 5 years, especially since starting my channel. There is to be no pressure when it comes to reading for me. I love a TBR, and I have made really big TBRs in the past, and I'm now in a phase where I really want a small TBR, but even with a big TBR, I am adamant about not allowing there to be pressure or stress when it comes to reading. I have books that I want to read. I do not accept a ton of review books from authors. I do not request books from publishers because those are usually attached to a deadline. I do have NetGalley, but I've been very casual with my NetGalley, as you guys know. But I'm really intentional about not allowing pressure to be attached to my hobby of reading. It is still my main purpose in reading is entertainment and escape in a way. And so I don't want to feel stressed when I sit down to read or feel like I have to read this by a certain point of time. Even with buddy reads that I do them pretty laid back. Very rarely do I have a page count or a chapter count per day that I have to read, because that always comes with a little bit of pressure. I am much more laid back with my buddy reads. And if I'm starting to feel in a slump, part of me says just go with it. Like, take a couple days off of reading, go for a walk without your earbuds in, watch a show, binge a show on Netflix. I've binged plenty of shows over the last few years and spent more time watching TV than reading. It happens, and those are seasons that come, and just roll with it. So yeah, I do participate and read a ton. I participate in a lot of bookish things, and I make content, and I'm reading a lot. But I don't have that fear of burnout, because if I start to feel slumpy, I just roll with it and allow myself space and remove that pressure. So I have not burnt out in the last 5 years. I still love reading. And I think part of how that's worked for me to not get into a slump that often is that I read so widely and so eclectically that if I felt like I had to read so many historical fiction in a row, I just don't do that. I variegate. I keep a lot of variety in what I'm reading so that I'm not getting bogged down by reading the same type of book all in one short time span. So I might read a thriller or a mystery or a historical fiction or a middle grade or a graphic novel or a classic or a contemporary romance or a legal drama I just read. So I like to have all this variety in the content of what I'm reading so that also helps me to prevent burnout or pressure or a slump. So that seriously could be a good old video. Dania Keaty. Dania? Sorry if I'm not pronouncing any of your names correctly. I apologize in advance. Dania asks, I'd like to know about your journey as a Christian. Were you raised in the church? Did you come to your faith later in life, etc.? And also some of my favorite nonfiction Christian books. Awesome. Cool. Well, I will try to keep this short and sweet. I mean, everybody's story or their testimony or their walk and relationship with God is going to be different. My father was a pastor, and I did grow up in church, and I started at a very young age my relationship with Christ. And I would think I was 5 maybe or 4 at a VBS at my aunt and uncle's church is the first time that I asked Jesus into my heart, as we would say when I was little. And I think I asked Jesus into my heart a million times when I was a kid because I didn't fully understand the meaning of what salvation really is. But I don't remember a time when I didn't love Jesus. I definitely had times where I was more apathetic and not actively moving in my faith closer to Christ, or not actively reading scripture on my own or growing in my faith. There were definitely times where I was more plateaued, which is not good. And different times in life, especially I think of when my dad passed away and when I was in my 20s, early 20s, that were faith shaking for me. But even in those faith shaking times, I don't feel like I turned away from God. But they were definitely times where I had to reevaluate who I believed God was and who I believed he was in my life and what I believed about him and what I was going to do about it. So there were definitely like ups and downs in my faith journey, but I don't remember a time when I didn't love Jesus. Some favorite nonfiction Christian books. I have 2 authors here. I have quite a few nonfiction Christian books that have been impactful in my life, but one author that I really love is Richard Foster, and he wrote The Celebration of Discipline and Prayer. Finding the Heart's True Home. And I've read both of these a couple different times, and I really, really love them. So Richard Foster is one that I really like. And also I have not reread any Philip Yancey. One, Where is God When It Hurts, deals with pain and like when life is just hard. And then What's So Amazing About Grace also. So these are two books that have been impactful for me. But those two authors are definitely ones that I would recommend as far as Christian nonfiction goes. Oshina from Oshina Gotta Read 'Em All asks, have you ever considered moving from the state you live in? And do I have any career goals? And how do I decide what to read in the Bible? Okay, so I am a mover. I feel I have been on a 6-year plan. Every 6 years I move somewhere new. And that has been the case for quite a long time. After college, I went to a Bible school for a year and a half as a student and then 4.5 years as a staff member. So I worked at that Bible school and I was there in total for 6 years. And then I moved to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I was there for 6 years. And then I moved to Foxborough, Massachusetts, and I was there for 6 years. And now I'm here in Virginia, and I have been here for almost 4. Is that true? Almost 4. Yikes. So yeah, I am not attached to a place. I'm attached to the East Coast. I can't imagine not living within driving distance to the ocean, even though I don't go to the ocean that often. I don't go to the beach that much, but I like where I live right now. Honestly, I like the climate of Virginia the best of all the places. I'm not a fan of winter, but I'm open to move. I'm open to go other places. It's kind of like when I feel God's little nudge. And as of right now, I'm single. So why not travel and explore a new place? But for now, I'm super content living in Virginia and don't see myself leaving here anytime soon, at least for the next 2 years. We'll see. Any career goals? No. I've never been one that was super ambitious as far as career. I have always had a dream of being a wife and a mom, and that hasn't been the path God has brought me on. So I nanny. It's like the next best thing. I get to take care of other people's kids and then come home and read all night long. So I love, love, love my job nannying right now. I haven't always been a nanny in Massachusetts. I was a children's pastor for 6 years. In Lancaster, I was a substitute teacher and piano teacher. And I worked at that Bible school as the president's secretary for 4.5 years. But throughout all of that, I've always taken care of kids, whether it's been babysitting or in different ways. But I love being a nanny right now. I'm super content with that. And I mean, the only upgrade that I would love to have is to have my own kids. But as I get older, that dream, it's like less and less likely to happen. So we'll see. But and then how do I decide what to read in the Bible? I have learned that I like having a plan. So right now I'm using one of the through the New Testament plans on YouVersion app on my phone. But I also have enjoyed in the past doing Bible study, like books, going through a book of the Bible, using a Bible study book, or through a small group at my church, reading something through that connection. Yeah. I've never been one that's just like randomly open it up and read that. I usually have a plan or a Bible study that I'm a part of. Julianne Carmen asks, when do you find the time to read so many books in a month? I'm lucky if I read one in a month or a month and a half. Yeah, I don't watch a lot of TV. That's the biggest answer. So when I come home from work, I spend most of my evening reading. If I go for a walk, I listen to audiobooks. If I'm cleaning around the house, I often will listen to audiobooks. If I'm driving my car, I'm listening to audiobooks. So I always have a book with me. I always have a book ready to listen to, except right now. I just finished one yesterday, so I need to find a new audiobook today. And then I just don't watch a lot of TV, so I read a lot in the evenings. I don't think that I'm a super fast reader. I just read all the time. So it is my hobby of choice. Amanda R. Rademacher asks, I know you like middle grade and historical fiction. If I could put a middle grade character into a historical fiction book, which character would it be and which book would you pick? Ooh, a middle grade character into a historical fiction book. Well, let's put, the girl from A Kind of Paradise. She ends up having to work in a library for some community service and realizes the importance of libraries and for the community, and makes connections that way. Let's put her into like the Giver of Stars and let her run the home base. Let her help run the home base as the women go out into the community, and let her develop some stuff in town for the kids of the town, right? In the Giver of Stars. Because they have in one of the towns, like a little home-based library where they store the books, and then they fill up their packs and go out into the mountains to deliver their books and things. And so the girl from A Kind of Paradise, who has just discovered this love of the library and the importance of a library and books and reading and the community aspect of it, but in this place that's a little harder, that could be fun. I don't know. That's a hard question. That's just the first thing that comes to mind. The bookworm Mafia Trish, hi Trish, asks, what did I want to be when I was a kid? Like when I grew up? Well, I always said teacher. Always, always. And then I was in school to be a teacher and I said, no way, I don't want to be a teacher. I love actually teaching. I don't like the politics and planning and prep and parents and all the other stuff that goes along with being a teacher. No, thank you. That's why I love substitute teaching, because I just get to go in and teach and be with the kids. And then I leave at the end of the day and I leave it all. That's what I wanted to be. There was a brief moment of time where I thought, let's be a cosmetologist, because me and my cousins would get together and like do our hair and nails and makeup and all that stuff, and don't know anything about it. I still don't know anything about it. So it was never a real dream of what I wanted to be, but I did say cosmetologist for a little while. But always I wanted to be a teacher. Julie Osborne asks, if you could experience reading a book for the first time again, which book would it be? I've already answered that. But I didn't have a good answer because I like rereading the books that are my favorite rereads. I don't have a good answer for that. Stephanie Neal asks, what are the makings of a great book for you? How do you decide what goes on your TBR list? Love your channel and recommendations. Thanks, Stephanie. What are the makings of a great book for me? I love some kind of a redemption arc or forgiveness arc. That really makes my day. I also love, not necessarily morally gray, but when you can really see a character wrestling with a decision and you can see both sides and you really can understand that tension, because that's life. That's realistic. We all have that tension in our lives at different times. And I love being able to see that and connect with that. I love books that have orphans finding either a found family or an adopted family or their own family, orphans finding home. That whole idea of finding home, whether that's in a found family or a new place or within their own family. I love that. I like there to be a rootable character. They don't all have to start out likable, but I need to be able to root for somebody like, come on, buddy, you got this. I don't like a book that has all despicable characters, but a good villain, a well-written villain that you kind of love to hate is also fun, as long as there's someone in the book that you can root for. How do I decide what goes on my TBR list? I'm sure I could come up with more things that make a great book, but those are a few things that come to my mind first. How do I decide what goes on my TBR list? Well, I look at this book. I look at this room of books and I see what stands out to me, but I also have some kind of I have a very few list of goals for the year. Like I want to read 10 of my NetGalley books. I want to read 10 of my book of the month books. I have books on my book cart that were recommended to me I'd like to focus on. I want to read Christmas books for my Christmas book exchange. So I have goals that sequels is another goal that I'm kind of in the back of my mind always working on. I have my 6 authors that I'd like to read or try out for the first time this year. So I look at what are the goals that I have for the year and kind of see if any of those books are jumping out to me. As of April, last month, I've already filmed my May TBR and I'm doing it again where I have a very, very limited TBR where I'm actually picking out a very small number of books and then leaving it wide open because this room is filled with books that I haven't yet read. And I want to leave a lot more room for mood reading and just kind of picking up what I feel like in the moment. It worked really well for me in April. I'm doing it again in May. It may continue on beyond May even. We'll see. Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia asks, what literary characters would you want to be friends with in real life? What other hobbies do you have besides reading? And what is your favorite season? And do I have a seasonally atmospheric book that I like to read during that time? Okay, lots of questions. A character that I would want to be friends with in real life. I should be out in the other room where I can look at my read books because there's not that many in here that are read books. Most of these are TBR. Who would I be friends with in real life? Molly Gibson from Wives and Daughters. She's the sweetest. She's just so kind and loving. And I like that in her. I would also want to be friends with, when I was younger, I would have loved to be friends with the Vanderbeeker children, help them with the garden that they make in that empty lot, sneaking around and making that garden in the way that they love their neighbors. Like, it would be cool if my family was in the brownstone and lived in the brownstone with the Vanderbeekers. I would have had fun with them when I was younger. I'm just looking at my shelves to see who else, but the shelf that's in front of me is my middle grade shelf. I think of Susan in The War That Saved My Life. She is the woman who ends up adopting or like taking in the two kids in The War That Saved My Life. And she's so hard shelled on the outside, but has a heart of gold. And I love her. Who else? Oh, the family of sisters, the sisters in Sarah Addison Allen's books, Garden Spells and First Frost. I would be friends with those sisters, and I would want the sister who cooks to make me all the food. I don't know. This is a hard one. I don't often think about my characters being real life friends. I would love to be a part of the friend group in the women in Giver of Stars. I love how that group of women are so different and yet come together and form such a strong friendship and stand up for each other and support each other throughout that book. I could be down with those friends. And traveling through the mountains delivering books to people, I would get scared out of my mind, but I'd be happy to run the home base with our girl from A Kind of Paradise. That's a hard question. I don't know who I would be friends with in real life. Like, which of the Bennett sisters would I most likely be friends with? Probably Elizabeth. The younger ones make me crazy. And Jane is too sweet. She's super sweet, but maybe a little too sweet. I like that Elizabeth has a little bit of punch to her and is not always making the greatest judgments about people. I love that because that's real life. I do that too. What other hobbies do I have besides reading? Well, I think I've touched on it already. I would say like board games, crocheting in the winter, puzzles sometimes, going for walks for sure, even hiking, like a more in-depth walk when I have the opportunity, and kayaking in the summertime. I love kayaking. Yeah, those are some other hobbies. I'd like to get back into running. It's a slow process because my back is not very strong. What is my favorite season? Fall. And do I have a seasonally atmospheric book that I like to read during that time? No. I'm not a huge seasonal reader. Yeah, I don't have specific books. I mean, if the word summer is in the title, I just recently got a book called Coyote Summer. It's a middle grade book. And am I going to read that until summertime? No way. It has the word summer right in the title. And I do love when I get a book that's super atmospheric. Like, I think I read The Dry by Jane Harper in August and September, which is that dry, hot period of time. And it was perfect for that time period. But I don't typically search out books that are atmospheric because of the season that we're in. And I always say fall is my favorite, but every spring here in Richmond, I'm like, but is spring my favorite? Because it's so pretty outside. Edward just says, keep doing what you're doing. I love your video. Thank you. Kathleen Bombino asks, how many children have you nannied over the years? Yikes, a lot. I was a mother's helper for triplets, 2 different sets of triplets. I worked with their families. No, twins and triplets. I'm sorry. Twins and an 18-month-old. Twin newborns and an 18-month-old. But I was like mother's helper. Mom was home as well. A set of triplets during that same time period. Since I've moved here, I've worked with 4 different families. My family of 4 that I've been with for 3 years, 2 different kiddos that I watched from the time they were 4 months until 18 months. And then little Luke that I'm with now, he was 4 months when I started and now he's 9 months. So 4 families since I moved here to Richmond, and since nannying was like my main job. Every other time it was kind of a supplemental job. Jennifer Dobbs asks, who or what got you into reading, when, and what kept you going with it? I feel like I've always been a reader. My parents always had books around. My mom was always up reading her Bible before I even got out of bed. Usually I'd come upstairs and get ready for school and she'd be in her chair reading. My parents both read aloud to us. My dad was a big reader, a super slow reader, but he was a big reader, loved books. So it's always been a part of my life. They've always read aloud to us, maybe after dinner or whatnot. We always had read alouds going. And then I just never lost that. There's definitely been times that I've read more than others. I think in college, I didn't do a lot of fun reading, but I ended up being an English major and I had to read a ton of books. So not as much for fun, but I've just always been a reader, but definitely had different seasons within my reading. Chelsea Andrews, top favorite books, like top 5 or maybe top 10. I'll put in the description links to the last few years, favorites from the years. But all-time favorite books, I would say, I used to say Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I have not read that in the past 5 years, so I don't know if that could still be considered a favorite considering how much I've read in the last few years. But I'll still say Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers, Anne of Green Gables by Ella Montgomery. Oh golly, which of my middle grades would I considered favorites? So many of them. But I think I'll say Sweep, The Story of a Girl and Her Monster, and Echo by Pam Munoz Ryan, and A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Those are ones that stand out to me at the moment. But I have lots of other favorite middle grades. Let's see, Christian fiction. I went on a Ted Dekker kick for a long time. He was my favorite for a long time. The Circle trilogy, which is now a series because there are 4 of them, was a favorite. I don't know. Recent favorites are like favorite authors. Kristen Hanna, Diane Chamberlain is now a favorite. Susan Meissner is now a favorite. Frederick Bachman. I love Frederick Bachman. I don't know. That's got to be close enough to 5 or 10. Christine Heckmans, does most everyone in your family read? And also, I enjoy your channel. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, probably about half. Like I said, my mom and dad were big readers. My brother BJ is a big reader. Jordan, my brother who lives with me, is a reader. I wouldn't call him a big reader, but he's had seasons where he's been a big reader. And then my sisters, not so much. Rachel doesn't read really at all. My sister Janine doesn't read often. And my brothers Joshua and Jeremiah do not read that I know of very often. So half and half, maybe. Brandy G asks, what made me become a nanny? Because I'm not a mom and I want to care for kids. So that is what made me become a nanny. And because I get to wear comfy clothes to work and leave work and not have to think about it when I come home. That is important to me. She also asks, first book you remember loving as a child? Charlotte's Web, I remember being the first book that made me cry. I loved Charlotte's Web, and it came in a box set with Charlotte's Web, Stuart Little, and The Trumpet of the Swan. And I read Charlotte's Web the most. Stuart Little was probably this close right behind it, and then Trumpet of the Swan I only read a couple of times. I didn't care for it as much. Those are first favorites for me, for sure. Favorite childhood Christmas gift. I remember finally getting a Nintendo, way after everybody else got one. We were super late to get it, and so it stands out in my mind because we were so excited. So excited. I got a blanket one year that had a teddy bear on it, and I just thought that was so cool. I think that's the 2 things that I remember most. We never had huge Christmases. It was often new socks and underwear and toothpaste and toothbrushes in our stockings and Tic Tacs and gum and some candies and a lot of practical things, along with a handful. There's a couple of things that were a little more fun. Her last question is unpopular book opinion, a book that you don't love that everyone else does. Ooh, spicy, Brandy. A book that I don't love that everyone else does. I would say a book that I don't love that everyone else does. I feel like there's always going to be someone else who agrees with me, but I did not love The Secret History. And when I first picked that up, I thought a lot of people loved that book by Donna Tartt. It was awful. Ugh. And I DNF'd it after 75%. And I was buddy reading it and I was like, sorry, I'm just can't do this one anymore. But that was a pretty popular book at the time. But I know there are a bunch of other people who also don't love it. Oh, East of Eden by John Steinbeck. That is one that a lot of people love that I just did not like at all. So there's 2 for you. Everywhere with Emily asks, when did your love for reading start, or have you always loved reading? I've already kind of answered that. I've always been a reader. Brandy asks, Brandy Fox, do you ever hit a reading lull? And if so, what is your jumpstart genre or author to get you back in the groove? Thanks. So I've talked a little bit about slumps and that I just kind of roll with it a little bit, but I will say that I do, to help me when I'm starting to feel that way, I will typically gear towards either a middle grade or a contemporary or something with lighter, like a sweet romance or a contemporary romance. Those are the 2 types of books that I read if I start to feel myself I've just read 4 historical fiction in a row. I need something, or Christian fiction as well, Christian fiction, historical. Those are often historical romances, the type of Christian fiction that I gear towards. Those also just feel like I'm coming home. There was a big season that was all I read was Christian fiction. So Christian fiction romances, contemporary romances, or a sweet historical romance, or middle grade. Those are the 3 that will help me get back into the groove of reading for sure. And I think that is it. That's it. Not too bad. I appreciate those of you who sent in questions. And again, if you have other questions for me, I am always happy to answer them either in the comments or in a live stream that I do every other week. But I had fun answering those questions and I hope that you did too. And again, thank you so much for being a part of this little corner of the internet. 6,000 of you are here. That's amazing to me. Amazing. I remember I did my first giveaway at 200 subscribers. I had received an extra box from the Fiction Guild, and so I sent out a box of books. And it was so much fun at that point. I remember getting 100, like, oh my word, 100 people are watching me. So I do not take it lightly that there are 6,000 of you who have clicked on that subscribe button. And if you're here and you have not yet clicked it, please consider clicking the button. But yeah, I have loved the connections that I've gotten to make with you over the last 5 years, and hopefully will continue for many more years to come. But I appreciate you, and thanks for watching this Q&A. If you have more questions, let's chat down in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. So one of the ones that I had a hard time with, one of the questions I had a hard time with was, what book would you like to read again for the first time? And I don't think I ever officially said one. So I would love to hear from you. If you have a book that you would like to read again for the first time, put it down in the comments below. That would be fun to see what you think. And of course, after I click stop on this button on this video, I will probably think of better answers to some of these, but these were just like my top of the head responses to some of these. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will definitely be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.